सत्यमेव जयते नामृतम् सत्यमेव जयते नामृतम् सत्येन पन्था विगतो देवयानः येनाक्रमन्ते ऋषयो यप्तकामा यत्र तं सत्यस्य परमं निधानम् माया हि वरदे देवी सर्वार्थसाधिके माया हि
Mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the Gita's yoga consists in the offering of one's work as a sacrifice to the divine, the conquest of desire, egoless and desireless action, bhakti for the divine, and entering into the cosmic consciousness, the sense of unity with all creatures, oneness with the divine. With always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, Canto 2, the Adoration of the Divine Mother, page 353. There is a zero sign of the Supreme. Nature, left nude and still, uncovers God. But in her grandiose nothingness, all is there. When her strong garbs are torn away from us, the soul's ignorance is slain, but not the soul. The zero covers an immortal face. A high and black negation is not all. A huge extinction is not God's last word. Life's ultimate sense, the close of being's course, the meaning of this great mysterious world. In absolute silence sleeps an absolute power. Awaking, it can wake the transbound soul, and in the ray reveal the parent sun. It can make the world a vessel of spirit's force. It can fashion in the clay God's perfect shape. To free the self is but one radiant base. Here to fulfill himself was God's desire. Even while he stood on being's naked edge, and all the passion and seeking of his soul faced their extinction in some featureless vast, the presence he yearned for suddenly drew close. Across the silence of the ultimate calm, out of a marvelous transcendence core, a body of wonder and transculency, as if a sweet mystic summary of herself, escaping into the original bliss, had come enlarged out of eternity. Someone came infinite and absolute, a being of wisdom, power, and delight, even as a mother draws her child to her arms, took to her breast nature and world and soul. Words of our Divine Mother, taken from the compilations of our Divine Mother's works, book The Sunlit Path, topic Peace and Quiet, subtopic Contacting That. Our Divine Mother says, there is something, there is a reality which is beyond all our expressions, but which we can succeed in contacting by practicing a discipline. We can identify ourselves with it. Once one is identified with it, one knows what it is, but one cannot express it, for words cannot say it. So, if you use one kind of vocabulary, if you have a particular mental conviction, you will use the vocabulary corresponding to that conviction. If you belong to another group which has another way of speaking, you will call it or even think about it in that way. I'm telling you this to give you the true impression that there is something there which cannot be grasped by thought, but which exists. But the name you give it matters little. That's of no importance. It exists. And so the only thing to do is to enter into contact with it, not to give it a name or describe it. In fact, there is hardly any use giving it a name or describing it. Our Divine Mother says one must try to enter into contact, to concentrate upon it, live that reality, and whatever the name you give, it is not at all important once you have the experience. The experience alone counts. And when people associate the experience with a particular expression, and in so narrow a way, so closed up in itself, that apart from this formula one can find nothing, that is an inferiority. One must be able to live that reality through all possible paths, all occasions, all formations. One must live it. For that indeed is true. For that is supremely good. That is all powerful. That knows all that. Yes, one can live that, but one cannot speak about it. And if one does speak, all that one says about it has no great importance. It's only one way of speaking, that is all. There is an entire line of philosophers and people who have replaced the notion of God by the notion of an impersonal absolute, or by a notion of truth, or a notion of justice, or even by a notion of progress, of something eternally progressive. But for one who has within him the capacity of identifying himself with that, what has been said about it hasn't much importance. Our Divine Mother says sometimes one may read a whole book of philosophy and not progress a step farther. Sometimes one might be a quiet, a fervent devotive of a religion and not progress. There are people who have spent their entire lifetime seated in contemplation and attained nothing. There are other people who used to do the most modest of manual works like a cobbler who had an experience. It's altogether beyond what one thinks and says of it. It is some gift that's there, that's all. And all that is needed to be that to succeed in identifying oneself with it and live it. At times you read one sentence in a book that leads you there. Sometimes you read entire books of philosophy or religion and they get you nowhere. There are people, however, whom the reading of philosophy books helps you to go ahead. But all these things are secondary. There is only one thing that's important, that is a sincere and persistent will. For these things don't depend or doesn't happen in a twinkling. So one must persevere. When someone feels that he is not advancing, he must not get discouraged. He must try to find out what is in nature that is opposing and then make the necessary progress. And then suddenly one goes forward. And when you reach the end, you have an experience. And what is remarkable is that people who have followed altogether different paths with altogether different mental constructions, from the greatest believer to the most unbelieving, even materialists have arrived at this experience. It is the same, but because it is true, because it is real, because it's a soul reality, and it is simply quite that. I do not say anything more. This is of no importance. The way one speaks about it, what is important is to follow the path, your path, no matter which. Yes, to go there. The next topic is birth into the spirit. Our Divine Mother says, in the individual experience, the spirit is what makes all the difference. So long as one just speaks of the spirit, it is something one has read about, whose existence one vaguely knows about, but not a very concrete reality for the consciousness. This means that one is not yet born into the spirit. And when one is born into the spirit, it becomes something much more concrete, much more living, much more real, much more tangible than the whole material world. And this is what makes the essential difference between beings. When that becomes spontaneously real, the true concrete existence, the atmosphere, one can freely breathe, then one knows one has crossed over to the other side. But so long as it is something rather vague and hazy, you have heard about it, you know that it exists, but it has no concrete reality. This means that the new birth has not yet taken place. Next subtopic: contact with one's psychic being. Our Divine Mother says, in ordinary life, there's not one person in a million who has conscious contact with his psychic being, even momentarily. The psychic being may work from within, but so invisibly, unconsciously from the outer being that it is as though it didn't exist. And in most cases, the immense majority, almost the totality of the cases, it is as though it were asleep, not at all active, in a kind of torpor. It is only with the sadhana and with a persistent effort that one succeeds in having a conscious contact with his psychic being. Usually it is considered that if one can do it in 30 years, they are lucky enough. Next subtopic, the psychic being. Our Divine Mother says, the psychic being is the center of light and truth and knowledge and beauty and harmony which the Divine Self in each one of you creates by His presence little by little. It is influenced, formed and moved by the Divine Consciousness of which it is a part and parcel. It is in each of you the deep inner being which you have to find in order that you come in contact with the divine in you. It is the intermediary between the divine consciousness and your external consciousness. It is the builder of the inner life. It is that which manifests in the outer nature the order and rule of the divine will. If you become aware in your outer consciousness of the psychic being within you and unite with it, you can find the pure eternal consciousness and live in it. Instead of being moved by the ignorance as the human being constantly is, you grow aware of the presence of an eternal light and knowledge within you, and to it you surrender, and are integrally consecrated to it and moved by it in all things. Our Divine Mother says, for your psychic being is that part of you which is already given to the Divine. It is its influence gradually spreading from within towards the most outward and material boundaries of your consciousness that will bring about the transformation of your entire nature. There can be no obscurity here. It is the luminous part in you. Most people are unconscious of the psychic part within them. The effort of yoga is to make you conscious of it so that the process of your transformation, instead of a slow labor extending through centuries, can be pressed into one life or even few years. Our Divine Mother says, the psychic being is that which persists after death because it is your eternal self. It is this that carries the consciousness forward from life to life. The psychic being is the real individuality of the true and divine individual within you. For your individuality means your special mode of expression, and your psychic being is a special asset of the one divine consciousness that has taken shape in you, says our Divine Mother. The temple within you, our Divine Mother says, in the depths of your consciousness is the psychic being, the temple of the divine within you. This is the center round which should come about the unification of all these divergent parts, all these contradictory moments of your being. Once you have got the consciousness of the psychic being and its aspiration, these doubts and difficulties can be destroyed. It takes more or less time, but you will surely succeed in the end. Once you have turned to the divine, saying, I want to be yours, and the divine has said yes, the whole world cannot keep you from it. When the central being has made its surrender, the chief difficulty has disappeared. The outer being is like a crust. In the ordinary people, the crust is so hard and thick that they are not conscious of the divine within them. If once, even for a moment, only if once, even for a moment, the inner being has said, I am here, I am yours, then it is as though a bridge has been built, and little by little the crust becomes thinner and thinner until the two parts are wholly joined, and the inner and the outer becomes one. Question, sweet mother, what is the work of the psychic being? For this, our Divine Mother says, what is the work of the psychic being? You wanted to have some work? What do you want to say exactly? What is its function? Well, one could put it this way, that it is like an electric wire that connects the generator with the lamp. Now, if someone has understood, let him explain what I said. The generator is the divine, and the lamp is the body. It is the body, it is the visible being, so that's its function. This means that if there is no psychic in matter, it will not be able to have any direct contact with the divine. And it is happily due to this psychic presence in matter that the contact between matter and the divine can be direct, and all human beings can be told, you carry the divine within you, and you have only to enter within yourself and you will find him. It is something very particular to the human being, or rather to the inhabitants of the earth. In the human being, the psychic becomes more and more conscious. Question, sweet mother, does the psychic being identify itself with the inner truth? For this, our Divine Mother says it organizes itself around it and enters into contact with it. The psychic is moved by the truth. The truth is something eternally self-existent and dependent on nothing in time or space, whereas the psychic being is a being that grows, takes form, progresses, individualizes itself more and more. In this way, it becomes more and more capable of manifesting this truth, the eternal truth that is one and permanent. The psychic being is a progressive being, which means that the relation between the psychic being and the truth is a progressive one. It is not possible to become aware of one's psychic being without becoming aware at the same time of the inner truth. All those who have had this experience, not a mental experience, but an integral experience of contact with this psychic being, not a contact with the idea they have constructed, but a truly concrete contact, all say the same thing. From the very minute this contact takes place, one is absolutely conscious of the eternal truth within oneself, and one sees that it is the purpose of life and the guide of the world. Our Divine Mother says the knowledge of the psychic is very important. The perception of the exterior consciousness may deny the perception of the psychic, but the psychic has the true knowledge, an instinctive knowledge. It says, I know, I cannot give reasons, but I know. For its knowledge is not mental, based on experience or proved truth. It does not believe after proofs are given. Faith is the moment of the soul whose knowledge is spontaneous and direct. Even if the whole world denies and brings forward 1,000 proofs to the contrary, still it knows by an inner knowledge, a direct perception that can stand against everything, a perception by identity. The knowledge of the psychic is something which is concrete and tangible, a solid mass. You can also bring it into your mental, vital, and physical, then you have an integral faith, a faith which can really move mountains, says our Divine Mother.